I never thought I'd be sharing something so personal on YouTube, but after everything that's happened, I need to tell my story. Maybe it will help someone else going through something similar. Maybe it will help me process the pain. I don't know. What I do know is that keeping it inside is slowly killing me. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 24 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had the perfect life. A loving mother, an amazing fiancé, and the sweetest little brother anyone could ask for. Now? Now I don't even know who I am anymore. Let me start from the beginning. I met Marcus when I was 17, during my junior year of high school. He had just transferred to our school, and from the moment he walked into our AP chemistry class, I was done for. You know those romance movies where time seems to slow down when the perfect guy walks in? That's exactly how it felt. Dark hair that always fell perfectly across his forehead, warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, and this quiet confidence that made everyone want to be around him. I remember thinking there was no way a guy like that would ever notice me. I was just the quiet girl who spent lunch in the library and helped organize school events. But fate had other plans. We got paired up as lab partners, and suddenly my whole world changed. Marcus wasn't just handsome. He was kind, funny, and incredibly smart. He'd help struggling freshmen with their homework during study hall. He volunteered at the local animal shelter on weekends. He was the type of person who remembered everyone's birthday and always knew exactly what to say when someone was having a bad day. Our first date was at this tiny Italian restaurant downtown. I was so nervous I barely ate anything, but Marcus made me feel comfortable right away. He told terrible jokes just to make me laugh. And by the end of the night, I knew I was falling for him. Hard. My mom, Claire, loved him from the start. She used to say he reminded her of my dad, who passed away when I was only 4. I don't have many memories of my father, just fragments really. The smell of his cologne, the sound of his laugh, the way he'd swing me around in circles until I got dizzy. But Mom kept his memory alive through stories and photographs. After Dad died, it was just Mom and me against the world. We were incredibly close, more like best friends than mother and daughter. We'd have movie marathons every Sunday, complete with face masks and ice cream. We shared clothes, finished each other's sentences, and could communicate entire conversations just through looks. People always said we were like the Gilmore Girls, and we loved that comparison. Mom dated occasionally over the years, but nothing ever seemed to stick. She'd go on a few dates with someone, then decide they weren't right for her. I think, deep down, she was still in love with my dad. She kept his wedding ring on a chain around her neck and never took it off. When Marcus and I started dating, he fit seamlessly into our little family. He'd join our movie marathons, adding his own commentary that had us both in stitches. He helped Mom carry groceries without being asked. He remembered her favorite flowers and would bring her a bunch whenever they were in season. Sometimes, when I had late practice for debate club or student council, they'd have dinner together and wait for me to get home. After graduation, Marcus and I both got into state university. We were lucky enough to get apartments in the same complex, just 2 floors apart. College was amazing. We had many of the same classes, studied together in the library until dawn, and spent weekends exploring the city. By our junior year, we were talking about marriage and our future together. But everything changed 4 years ago, when Mom called me with unexpected news. She was pregnant, at 42. It wasn't something she had planned or even thought possible. She had been casually dating someone. She never told me who, but the relationship hadn't worked out. She was terrified about being a single mother again at her age. I remember exactly where I was when I got that call, sitting on the floor of my dorm room, surrounded by textbooks for finals. Without hesitation, I told her everything would be okay, that I would help her through it, that we would figure it out together just like we always had. Marcus was incredibly supportive during Mom's pregnancy. He went with us to doctor's appointments when I couldn't make it due to classes. He helped set up the nursery, spending entire weekends painting walls and assembling furniture. He even learned how to cook Mom's weird pregnancy cravings, pickles dipped in chocolate, and peanut butter sandwiches with jalapenos. When my little brother Tommy was born, it was like our family was finally complete. He was the most beautiful baby I'd ever seen. Big brown eyes, a head full of dark curls, and the sweetest smile that could light up an entire room. Marcus was amazing with him from day one. He'd spend hours just walking around the house with Tommy when he was fussy, singing off-key lullabies until he fell asleep. As Tommy grew, Marcus remained a constant presence in his life. They had this special bond that made my heart melt every time I saw them together. Marcus would take him to the park, teach him how to throw a ball, and always had time for just one more bedtime story. I used to dream about how wonderful he would be with our own children someday. That's what makes everything that happened next so much worse, because while I was planning our wedding and dreaming about our future family, while I was watching the man I loved bond with my baby brother, while I was grateful for how perfectly everything had worked out, it was all built on lies. I discovered the truth on what should have been just another quiet Friday night. Marcus was out with his college friends for their monthly game night, and I had decided to stay home. It had been a long week at work, and all I wanted was to curl up on our couch with a glass of wine and catch up on my favorite shows. Looking back now, I can see how the universe works in mysterious ways. If my laptop hadn't died that night, if I hadn't been too lazy to walk to the bedroom for my charger, if I hadn't decided to use Marcus's iPad instead, I might still be living in blissful ignorance. Sometimes I wonder if that would have been better. The iPad was sitting on the coffee table, where Marcus had left it after showing me some wedding venue photos earlier that week. We were 6 months away from our wedding date, and everything was falling into place. We'd already booked the perfect venue. A beautiful restored barn with fairy lights and a garden full of wildflowers. I'd found my dream dress, a vintage-inspired lace gown that made me feel like a princess. Mom had been helping with all the planning, offering suggestions and helping me create the perfect playlist for our first dance. I knew Marcus's passcode, 0824, the day we first met. When the iPad unlocked, messages started popping up rapidly. I guess he hadn't used it in a while. At first, I didn't pay much attention, assuming they were just notifications from his games or work emails. But then I saw my mom's number. The message preview made my blood run cold. "We need to talk about Tommy. It's not fair to keep." My hands were shaking as I opened the full conversation. I told myself there had to be an innocent explanation. Maybe Mom needed help planning a surprise birthday party for Tommy. Maybe she was asking Marcus for advice about something. Maybe. But as I scrolled through the messages, my world began to crumble. There were photos, dozens of them. Tommy as a newborn. Mom at various stages of her pregnancy. Tommy's first steps, first words, first birthday. All saved in a hidden folder labeled family. The conversations between them were even worse. They talked about their guilt, about how they couldn't lose me, about how they'd messed up. Mom was pressing Marcus about telling me the truth, saying it wasn't fair for Tommy to grow up not knowing his real father. Marcus was resistant, saying they'd already agreed to keep it secret. I felt physically sick. The room started spinning, and I barely made it to the bathroom before throwing up. As I sat on the cold tile floor, memories started flooding back, taking on horrifying new meanings. All those times Marcus had dinner with Mom while I was at debate practice, the way they sometimes shared looks I couldn't quite understand, how Tommy had Marcus's exact smile, his same dimple in the left cheek. How could I have been so blind? I stayed in the bathroom for what felt like hours, alternating between crying and dry heaving. My phone kept buzzing, probably Marcus checking in, or maybe Mom asking about our usual weekend brunch plans. The thought of facing either of them made me sick all over again. When I finally gathered the strength to leave the bathroom, I found myself moving on autopilot. I packed a small bag with essentials, clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and important documents. I couldn't stay in our apartment. Every corner held memories that now felt poisoned. I called my best friend, Rachel, who lived across town. We'd been friends since kindergarten, and she was the only person I could think of who might understand. When she answered, I could barely get the words out between sobs. But Rachel, bless her heart, didn't need me to explain everything. She just said, "I'm coming to get you. Pack what you need. You're staying with me." While I waited for Rachel, I sat on our bed, the bed Marcus and I had picked out together when we first moved in, and stared at the engagement ring on my finger. It was a vintage piece we'd found at an antique store. A delicate gold band with a small diamond surrounded by tiny sapphires. Marcus had said it reminded him of my eyes. I took it off and placed it on his pillow. The indent on my finger felt like an accusation. Rachel arrived just as Marcus texted that he was heading home. I left before he could catch me. I couldn't face him yet. I needed time to process, to figure out how to confront the two people I trusted most in the world about their betrayal. That night, lying on Rachel's couch, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying every moment of the past 4 years, searching for signs I should have seen. Had there been clues? Had others noticed? Was I the only one who hadn't known? The worst part was thinking about Tommy, my sweet, innocent little brother, who was actually I couldn't even complete the thought. He was the only truly innocent person in this whole mess. And my heart broke thinking about how this would affect him. Around dawn, my phone had over 50 missed calls and dozens of messages from both Marcus and Mom. I read none of them. Instead, I turned off my phone and tried to figure out what to do next. How do you even begin to confront something like this? I spent the next day in a fog, barely eating or sleeping. Rachel tried to get me to have some soup, but everything tasted like ash. Around 8 p.m., I finally turned my phone back on. The flood of notifications was overwhelming. 78 missed calls, over 200 text messages, and countless social media notifications. I ignored them all except for one text I sent to Marcus. "I know everything. I'm coming home at 9. Be there." When I walked into our apartment that night, Marcus was sitting on the couch, head in his hands. The iPad was on the coffee table where I'd left it, still open to those damning messages. He looked up when I entered, and I barely recognized him. His eyes were red and puffy, his usually perfect hair a mess. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "Sarah," he started, his voice breaking. "I can explain, Dash." "Explain?" My voice came out eerily calm. "Explain how you slept with my mother? Explain how you fathered my brother? Explain how you've been lying to my face for 4 years." He stood up, taking a step toward me. I backed away like he was contagious. "Don't you dare come near me. It wasn't supposed to happen," he said, running his hands through his hair. "Your mom and I, it was just one time at first. You were away on that girl's trip to Miami. We had dinner, like we usually did when you were busy. We'd both had too much wine and—" "Stop." I felt bile rising in my throat. "I don't want to hear about how you and my mother got drunk and decided to destroy my life. But it wasn't like that." He was crying now. "We felt terrible afterward. We agreed it was a horrible mistake. But then she found out she was pregnant and we didn't know what to do. We knew telling you would destroy everything." I laughed, a hollow sound that scared even me. "So you decided lying to me for years was better? Watching me love and care for your son while planning our wedding, letting me dream about having children with you, knowing you already had a child with my mother. I love you, Sarah," he pleaded. "I've always loved you. What happened with your mom, it was a mistake. A terrible, horrible mistake. But my love for you has always been real." Real? I spat the word like poison. Real love doesn't involve sleeping with your girlfriend's mother. Real love doesn't involve years of lies and deceit. "We can work through this," he said, desperation in his voice. "We can go to counseling. I'll do anything. Please, just don't throw away 7 years over one mistake." One mistake? I pulled out my phone and started reading from the messages I'd screenshot. Meeting for coffee to discuss how to tell her. Another dinner to figure things out. How many mistakes were there, Marcus? His silence was answer enough. 4 times. He finally whispered. It happened 4 times. The room started spinning again. 4 times. While I was planning our future, while I was picking out wedding flowers and creating Pinterest boards for our dream house, they were, "Get out," I said quietly. "Sarah, please dash. Get out," I screamed, grabbing the nearest object, a framed photo of us from our engagement party, and throwing it at the wall. The glass shattered, scattering across the floor like my dreams. "This is my apartment too," he said weakly. "Fine. Then I'll leave." I turned toward our bedroom, but his next words stopped me cold. "What about Tommy? He loves you. You can't just disappear from his life." I whirled around, fury making my vision blur. "How dare you? How dare you use that sweet, innocent child as a weapon? Tommy, who you've been pretending is just your future brother-in-law, when he's actually your son, the biggest victim in all of this. I'm going to tell him the truth," Marcus said. "He deserves to know his real father." "Congratulations," I said bitterly. "You get to be daddy to the son you never wanted anyone to know about. I hope you're proud of yourself." I packed more of my things that night, hands shaking so badly I could barely zip my suitcase. Marcus sat on the couch the whole time, occasionally making broken attempts at conversation that I ignored. As I was leaving, he called out one last time, "I really do love you, Sarah." I paused at the door, not turning around. "No, Marcus. You loved the idea of me, the perfect fiancé, who was too trusting to see what was happening right in front of her. The fool who thought her mother and her future husband were the 2 people she could trust most in the world. That person doesn't exist anymore. You and Mom killed her." The confrontation with my mother was even worse. I didn't confront my mom immediately. I needed time to process everything, to get my thoughts in order. But she made the decision for me by showing up at Rachel's apartment the next morning. I was in the kitchen, staring blankly at a cup of cold coffee, when I heard the doorbell. Rachel answered it, and I heard my mother's voice, the same voice that used to sing me to sleep when I had nightmares, the same voice that had been lying to me for years. "Sarah, honey, please talk to me." Mom called through the door. "Marcus called me. We need to discuss this as a family." As a family. The words hit me like a physical blow. What kind of family sleeps with their daughter's fiancé? What kind of family lies about a child's parentage for years? Rachel looked at me, silently asking what I wanted to do. I nodded. Better to get it over with. When Mom walked in, she looked exactly the same as she always did, perfectly put together in her favorite blue cardigan, her hair neatly styled. Something about that made me even angrier. How dare she look so normal when my entire world was falling apart? "Oh, sweetheart," she said, moving to hug me. I stepped back. "Don't touch me," I said, my voice shaking. "Don't you dare touch me. Sarah, please." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know you're angry, but if you'll just let me explain, Dash." "Explain what, Mom?" "How you slept with my fiancé. How you got pregnant with his child. How you've been lying to my face for 4 years. It wasn't supposed to happen," she said. The exact same words Marcus had used. I was in a bad place. Your father's birthday was coming up, and I was feeling so alone. Marcus reminded me so much of him. I felt like I'd been slapped. Are you seriously trying to use Dad to justify this? Dad, who loved you so much he spent his last breath telling you to be happy. You're using his memory to excuse sleeping with your daughter's fiancé. You don't understand, she pleaded. Marcus was kind and he listened, and he reminded me so much of your father when we were young. One night, we had too much wine and... Stop, I screamed. I don't want to hear about how the 2 people I trusted most in the world got drunk and betrayed me. And it wasn't just once, was it? Marcus told me it happened 4 times. 4 times, Mom. She sank into a chair, her face in her hands. We were trying to figure out what to do. When I found out I was pregnant, we didn't know how to tell you. We thought it would destroy you. So you decided lying was better? Watching me help raise my fiancé's child. Thinking he was my brother? Letting me plan a wedding while knowing this secret? Did you ever think about what finding out would do to me? We thought we were protecting you, she whispered. Protecting me? I laughed hysterically. By letting me live a lie. By watching me love and care for Tommy. Never knowing he was actually my stepson? What was your plan, Mom? Were you going to let me marry Marcus without ever telling me the truth? We were going to tell you, she said weakly. We just needed to find the right time. The right time. My voice rose. When would that be? After the wedding? After I had Marcus's children? When Tommy was old enough to figure out the math himself? When exactly is the right time to tell your daughter you slept with her fiancé and had his child? Rachel, who had been quietly watching from the corner, stepped forward. Mrs. Mitchell, I think you should leave. Mom stood up, reaching for me again. Sarah, please. You're my daughter. I love you. We can work through this. Love me. I felt something break inside me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. If you loved me, you wouldn't have betrayed me in the worst possible way. If you loved me, you wouldn't have let me live a lie for 4 years. What about Tommy? She asked desperately. He asks for you every day. He doesn't understand why his sister isn't coming to see him. The mention of Tommy was like a knife to my heart. Don't you dare use him against me. He's the only innocent person in this whole mess. You and Marcus are the ones who put him in this position. You're the ones who decided to bring a child into this web of lies. He's still your brother, she said softly. No, I replied, my voice ice cold. He's my ex-fiancé's son with my mother. And every time I look at him, I'll be reminded of that fact. Every time I see his smile. Marcus's smile. I'll remember how the 2 people I trusted most in the world destroyed everything I believed in. Mom was crying openly now. Please don't do this. Please don't cut us out of your life. We're still family. Family? I walked to the door and opened it. Family doesn't do what you did. Family doesn't betray each other like this. Family doesn't lie for years about something this huge. You and Marcus, you're not my family anymore. You're just the people who taught me never to trust anyone again. The weeks that followed were some of the darkest of my life. I took a leave of absence from work. There was no way I could focus on spreadsheets and client meetings when my entire world had imploded. Thank God for Rachel. She didn't just give me a place to stay. She became my lifeline. But even with Rachel's support, I felt like I was drowning. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, gasping for air. My dreams filled with twisted versions of happy memories. In my nightmares, I was always back at family dinners, watching Marcus and Mom exchange secret glances while I remained oblivious. Or I'd be playing with Tommy, his features morphing between Marcus's and mine until I'd wake up screaming. The hardest part was dealing with everyone else's reactions. News like this doesn't stay secret in a small town. Within days, it seemed like everyone knew. The whispers would start whenever I ventured out. At the grocery store, at the coffee shop, even at the gym, I could feel people's eyes on me, could imagine their conversations. That's her, the one whose mother had a baby with her fiancé. My phone was constantly buzzing with messages from well-meaning friends and relatives. Stay strong, sweetie. Everything happens for a reason. Time heals all wounds. At least you found out before the wedding. I wanted to scream at them all. How could anything heal this kind of wound? How could there possibly be a reason good enough to justify this level of betrayal? The extended family was split. My Aunt Maria, Mom's sister, tried to play peacemaker. She kept calling, trying to convince me to hear them out and work through this as a family. I blocked her number after the 5th call. My cousin Jessica, though, was firmly on my side. She offered to let me move in with her family in another city, saying maybe a fresh start would help. Marcus's family was another nightmare altogether. His mother called me crying, saying she was horrified by what her son had done. His father sent a long email apologizing on behalf of their family, saying they understood if I never wanted to see them again, but that they would always consider me the daughter they never had. Their kindness almost made it worse. It was yet another reminder of the future I'd lost. Then there were the mutual friends, the ones who'd known us since high school. Most were shocked and supportive, but some actually tried to defend them. They made a mistake, they'd say, but they obviously feel terrible about it, as if feeling bad somehow made up for years of deception. One night, about a month after everything came out, I ran into Marcus's best friend Mike at the local bar. I'd gone there hoping to have one quiet drink, trying to feel normal for just an hour. Mike was drunk, and he started talking about how Marcus was going through hell and how this whole situation was destroying him. I lost it. Right there in the middle of the bar, I started screaming at him. He's going through hell. He's going through hell. He chose this. He chose to sleep with my mother. He chose to lie about it for years. He chose to let me help raise his secret child while planning our wedding. He doesn't get to be the victim here. The entire bar went silent. I grabbed my purse and ran out, crying so hard I could barely see. Rachel found me sitting on the curb outside, rocking back and forth, completely broken. That night was a turning point. As Rachel held me while I sobbed, I realized I couldn't stay in this town anymore. Every street corner held memories. Every familiar face knew my story. Every place I went reminded me of what I'd lost. The next day, I started applying for jobs in other cities. I needed a fresh start, somewhere where I wasn't that poor girl, or the one whose mom and fiancé had a baby together. Somewhere where I could try to rebuild myself without the weight of everyone's pity and judgment. Mom kept trying to reach out. She'd send long emails about how sorry she was, how much she missed me, how Tommy kept asking for his sister. Marcus would leave voicemails, his voice breaking as he begged for another chance. I deleted them all without reading or listening. They'd had 4 years to tell me the truth. Their guilt now meant nothing to me. The hardest messages to ignore were about Tommy. Videos of him playing in the park, pictures of him holding up drawings he'd made for me, recordings of him asking when I was coming home. Each one felt like a knife to my heart. He was innocent in all of this, but how could I be in his life? How could I look at him without seeing the betrayal that created him? 2 months after the discovery that shattered my world, I got a job offer in Seattle, about as far from our small Midwest town as I could get while staying in the continental U.S. The position was similar to what I'd been doing, but with better pay and opportunities for advancement. More importantly, it was a chance to start over. The day I gave notice at my old job, I ran into Marcus at the local coffee shop. I'd been carefully avoiding all our usual places, but I'd gotten careless. He looked terrible, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes. Part of me felt a sick satisfaction seeing him suffer. The other part still loved him, and I hated myself for it. "Sarah," he said, taking a step toward me. "Please, can we talk? I'm moving to Seattle," I said flatly. "I got a new job." His face crumpled. "You can't. What about Tommy? What about us?" "There is no us," I replied. "There hasn't been an us since you decided to sleep with my mother. As for Tommy," my voice caught. "He has his parents. Both of them. I never wanted to be his father." Marcus blurted out, "I mean, I love him, but I wanted our children, the ones we planned." I held up my hand to stop him. "You don't get to say that. You don't get to talk about our planned children when you already had one with my mother. You made your choices, Marcus. Now I'm making mine." As I turned to leave, he grabbed my arm. "I'm getting partial custody," he said quickly. "Your mom and we're working out an arrangement." I want to be there for him properly. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too airless. Good for you, I managed to say. I hope you and my mother are very happy playing house with my brother, with your son. I ran out before he could say anything else, before I could break down in public again. When I got back to Rachel's, I found an email from Mom. She'd heard about Seattle from Maria. The subject line read, "Please don't go." Against my better judgment, I opened it. "Dearest Sarah, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but please don't move across the country. We can find a way through this. Tommy needs his sister. I need my daughter. Marcus. Marcus is trying to do the right thing now. We all made terrible mistakes, but running away won't heal anything. I know you won't believe me, but I think about what I did every single day. Every time I look at Tommy, I see the pain I've caused you. Every time he asks for his big sister, my heart breaks all over again. I know I destroyed our relationship, destroyed your trust, destroyed your future with Marcus. I will regret it for the rest of my life. Please just meet with me one more time before you go. Let me try to explain. Let me try to fix what I broke. Love always. Mom." I deleted the email without responding. What was there to say? That I still woke up every morning hoping it was all a bad dream? That sometimes I caught myself reaching for my phone to call her, forgetting for a split second what she'd done? That every time I saw a mother and daughter together, I felt like screaming? The next few weeks were a blur of packing and paperwork. Rachel helped me sort through the things I'd left at the apartment I'd shared with Marcus. He wasn't there when we went, probably at work, or maybe with Tommy. I took only what was undeniably mine, leaving behind anything we'd bought together. Each shared possession felt tainted now. The hardest things to pack were the photos. I found myself sorting them into piles, before and after. Before, when I thought I had the perfect life, the perfect mother, the perfect fiancé. After, when I realized it was all a lie. I ended up leaving most of them behind. The memories were too painful. The night before I left for Seattle, Rachel threw me a small goodbye dinner. Just a few close friends who had stood by me through everything. As we sat around her dining room table, sharing pizza and wine, I looked at these people who had become my lifeline and felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in months. "You're the strongest person I know," Rachel said as we hugged goodbye. "You're going to be okay. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday." Seattle was exactly what I needed. The constant rain matched my mood, and there was something comforting about being surrounded by thousands of strangers who didn't know my story. In my new city, I wasn't the girl whose mother had a baby with her fiancé. I was just Sarah, the new marketing manager from the Midwest. My apartment was tiny and overpriced, with a view of nothing but other buildings, but it was mine. No memories lurked in the corners. No ghosts of happier times haunted the rooms. I filled it with new furniture, new photos, new everything. Anything to avoid reminders of my old life. Work kept me busy, which was a blessing. I threw myself into projects, volunteering for extra assignments, staying late at the office. My boss probably thought I was gunning for a promotion. The truth was, I was just trying to avoid being alone with my thoughts. Therapy helped. Once I finally worked up the courage to go. My therapist, Dr. Chen, helped me understand that what I was experiencing was a form of complex grief. I wasn't just mourning the loss of my relationship with Marcus. I was mourning the loss of my mother, my relationship with Tommy, my trust in people, and my belief in love itself. "You're allowed to be angry," she told me during one session. "You're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to never forgive them. But don't let their actions define the rest of your life." The hardest part was dealing with Tommy's birthday. He turned 4 6 months after I moved to Seattle. Mom sent me photos of the party. Him blowing out candles on a Spider-Man cake, opening presents, playing with Marcus. I could see they were trying to show me what I was missing, trying to guilt me into coming back. But there was something else in those photos that caught my eye. The way Mom and Marcus stood apart from each other. The awkward body language, the forced smiles. It made me wonder about their custody arrangement, about how they were managing to co-parent while dealing with their own guilt and regret. Not that it mattered anymore. Their relationship, whatever it was, wasn't my problem. I had my own healing to focus on. Dating was complicated. The first time someone asked me out at work, I had a panic attack in the bathroom. How could I ever trust anyone again? How could I believe in love when the two people I loved most had betrayed me so completely? But slowly, very slowly, I started to open up again. I joined a hiking group, made new friends who only knew the bare outline of my past. I started practicing yoga, learning to be present in my body instead of lost in my memories. I adopted a cat from the local shelter, a cranky orange tabby who didn't care about my tragic backstory as long as I fed him on time. A year after moving to Seattle, I received another email from Mom. Tommy had started kindergarten. She attached a photo of him in his new backpack, beaming at the camera. He had Marcus's smile, but my mom's eyes. The sight of him made my heart ache in a way I wasn't prepared for. That night, I finally let myself cry for everything I'd lost. Not just Marcus and Mom, but Tommy. Sweet, innocent Tommy, who would grow up not understanding why his big sister disappeared. Would they tell him the truth someday? Would he hate them for it? Or would he hate me for leaving? I thought about writing back, about trying to maintain some kind of relationship with Tommy from a distance. But Dr. Chin helped me understand that I needed to prioritize my own healing. Maybe someday, when he's older, I'll find a way to explain everything to him. Maybe someday, I'll be strong enough to face that part of my past. For now, I'm focusing on rebuilding myself. Some days are harder than others. Sometimes I still wake up reaching for my phone to call Mom, forgetting for a split second what happened. Sometimes I see a happy couple planning their wedding and have to leave the room. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I'd never picked up that iPad. But I'm healing. Slowly, imperfectly, but healing nonetheless. I'm learning to trust again, not blindly, but carefully and with boundaries. I'm learning that it's okay to miss the people who hurt you while still choosing to keep them out of your life. I'm learning that family isn't just about blood or tradition. It's about the people who stand by you when your world falls apart. To anyone watching this who's going through something similar, maybe not exactly the same situation, but any kind of deep betrayal by the people you trusted most, I want you to know that you're not alone. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to cut toxic people out of your life, even if they're family. It's okay to put yourself first. Your story isn't over just because one chapter ended badly. You can write a new one. It might not be the story you planned, but it can still be beautiful in its own way.